This is Mason Alexander Park, and you are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Greetings, Dr. Beckett. Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
What? It can't be right.
You are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast. This is episode 115, July 13th, 1985.
How did I get here?
Yeah, I know. A million bad decisions, I guess. But I am not going to let the one thing I got right in my life slip through my fingers. Who's Nick Rounder?
Ben! Thank God. We've been trying to find you for hours. What the hell happened? We weren't ready. Why did you leave?
Do I know you?
Do you... You don't remember me?
I don't remember anything.
We knew memory loss could be a side effect of the leap.
Leap, why do you keep saying what's happening to me?
Okay, this is all gonna feel a little overwhelming, so I'm gonna explain it to you slowly. Your name is Dr. Ben Song. You're a time traveler from the year 2022. I'm Addison Augustine. We work together. Look, I'm here to bring you home. But to do that, you need to... Thank me?
Need to what?
You need to get that imaging chamber back online now.
Yeah, I'm working on it, that and about 1,000 other things. Ziggy is offline.
What? How?
Well, right before he leaped, Ben uploaded a bunch of new code, like a whole new version of the quantum operating system.
Why?
The past 5 years, we've been trying to figure out how to send someone to a single point in time and then bring them right back to take the work of Sam Beckett and make it so that you don't get stuck in the past.
Yeah, Ann, I know. I've been here since the beginning.
We were still in the simulation phase. We were years away from actual human testing, and yet Ben just suddenly, magically writes a whole new operating system, gets into the machine, and then leaps. None of it makes any sense.
The Pentagon is asking questions. At some point, I'm going to have to tell them the truth.
No. The second that you do, they are going to shut us down and we are never going to get Ben home. We can't let that happen.
Find out what he's there to do and bring him home.
Now, if we have any hope of getting you home, you have to do the same for this guy.
What the hell kind of time travel project is this? How does helping someone cause me to leap?
We don't know. What do you know about him?
His name's Nick Rounder. He's a part of a stick-up crew, if that's what they call them. This is crazy. I can't do this.
Yes, you can. They think you're Nick Rounder. Keep it that way and you'll be fine. Ben, I need to talk to you.
Ryan's not a criminal. He's trying to save his wife. I think that's why I'm here, to help him.
You are. Ryan shot dead tonight. You're here to save his life.
Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast, everyone. I'm Christopher DeFilippis.
I'm Allison Pregler.
And I'm Matt Dale.
And today, the time has finally come. We are reviewing the new Quantum Leap. We've been waiting so long for this moment.
Those are words.
Quantum Leap!
Those are words I never thought I'd hear Chris saying.
Well, they're the words that Chris thought Chris would never hear saying, or whatever you just said, right? What you said, but I said it, right? That's how excited I am.
This is a great start.
I can't even talk.
We're doing so well.
Welcome to all of the new listeners. You see how professional we are here, because I have to assume there are some new listeners who are hopping on because they saw the new show. So,
welcome,
if you're one
leapers.
Of those
Welcome.
New leapers.
You've got 114 episodes of the podcast to go back and listen. Go and listen to them first. None of this will make any sense unless you've listened to 114
understand
episodes.
the lore.
The lore of the podcast. We're going to be making jokes about diaper monkeys. It's not going to mean anything to you. I'm kidding.
But one day it will.
This is not going to happen. This is accessible.
Yes, this is a good starting point if you're new to the podcast, just like the reboot. It's not even a reboot. I can't even say that anymore. But anyway, we'll get into that. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the premiere of the new Quantum Leap. And in addition to that, we are also going to be bringing you an interview with Addison Augustine herself, Caitlin Bassett, the new Observer. She
so
spoke
sweet.
to us. Can you believe
She
it?
was so nice.
So lovely.
Yeah, she was great. And she tells us about how she got the part and what Leapers might have in store as the new season progresses. So it's just, it was a fun interview. And we can't wait to bring that to you. That'll
She was
happen.
dropping all the spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
She said what's going on all of this season, all of next season. And she dropped all the tea on everyone. It was wild.
The 5-year arc, you heard it here first. You just gotta sit through the rest of the podcast and then you'll know.
Yeah, that's all a blatant lie. But Caitlin was great.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah. Just so you know, that was all a joke.
Oh, goodness, these new listeners.
But the interview is real, by the way. The interview is not a joke. The interview is real. She was very nice. She told us very cool things.
Yeah.
It is true. It is true. And yeah, so wait for that. That'll be after the break. And, you know, it's funny because I feel like for the first time that we've been hosts of the Quantum Leap podcast, we need to sort of maybe reintroduce the podcast and sort of how we do things in case we do have new listeners. So as you heard, I'm Chris and we have Allison and Matt, the co-hosts, and we discuss every episode, we break it down and we talk about, you know, different aspects of it. But I think it's important for everybody to know how we sort of frame our discussions because we are all huge Quantum Leap fans. There's no disputing that. And nobody wants this show to succeed more than we do. That being said, we're also not a fluff show. Like, we don't just come in and say, that was great. And wasn't that part great? And hey, this is great. We have like an honest discussion. And if we see issues, if we see missteps, if we see things that we think just plain stink, we call it out. We'll do it in a loving way. We'll do it in a funny way. But we have honest, respectful discussion here. So if that is something that you're into, that's what you're going to get from us. You know, sometimes I feel weird. And this is something that we haven't had to address in a long time because we've been talking about a show that's been off the air for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So we can say, oh my God, Diaper Monkey, that's a load of shit.
If there's another Diaper Monkey, though, I feel like I'll have the same reaction. And if anyone from the new show is listening, Diaper Monkey Part 2, it's nobody wants this, but I kind of want it. So keep it in mind, maybe for season 2.
We spent the best part of, I think, 2 seasons building up to my least favourite episode. And then when the time came, Chris managed to arrange for the writer to be on the podcast with us. So I got to tell him to his face how much it sucked. And,
but he didn't like it either, though.
Exactly.
That's
because
true.
Yeah.
20 odd
The
years
only person
had
that
passed.
hates that episode more than you is Tommy Thompson.
It was, but that was easy. Like you say, this is new for us to actually be talking about something that's going out right now, and there are people out there working on this show at the moment.
Right. So we have nothing but love, nothing but respect. And we are just in awe of all the hard work that you guys are doing. And, you know, you're all killing it. So just let's get that out there to begin with. All right. So, again, I feel like that's always been a given, but it's always best to be safe, especially, you know, if you're speaking to a new audience. So welcome. If you're here and you're new, welcome. We hope that you enjoy the show. And we're going to start where we always do with some first impressions. So, Allison, give us your first impressions of July 13th, 1985.
I'd like to ask that this time around, maybe we don't start with me.
All right.
I would like to start off with some more, with it. I'd just like to hear what you guys have to say first before I get into my thing.
You know what? I have like a whole thing planned. Matt, do you want to go first or however you want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think, Matt?
So, getting past the fact that Quantum Leap is back. So, I mean, I just watched the first 10 seconds of this just being in awe of the fact that Quantum Leap is back, and I stopped being excitable. And actually trying to look at it through a critical eye. It's a pilot with a lot to introduce in 42 minutes. And it rushes along at breakneck speed, which can be a good thing. It was certainly exciting. It also maybe could have done with some room to breathe. But there's a lot to love in it. I although they were introducing characters and concepts so quickly, everything that was being introduced, I just had a big grin on my face. I think there's some really cool characters, some of which we haven't really got to know yet, and I think we'll talk about that more as the podcast goes on. There's 1 or 2 characters that are still very much in the background, but it's promising. and that was overall the feeling I got from this. There's a lot that I'm still waiting to see in future episodes, but it was a promising start.
All right, that's cool because, yeah, it's funny. I have a weird thing when it comes to properties that I love, franchises that I love. I always have to balance my expectations with the reality of what I'm going to see on screen. And like anytime I watch, say, like a new Star Trek movie or a new Star Trek show, or that's just a ready example because there's been a lot of new stuff like that lately, I become like so hyper alert that I am juggling a million things in my head about the story, about the dialogue, about the lore, about how does this jive and where does this fit in history? And oh, look over there, there's something shiny. And oh, wait, what did they just say? And I'm so overwhelmed that it fails to coalesce in my head. I only see like all of these separate pieces floating. And I always have to watch something at least 2 times, 3 preferably, before I can settle into it, if it's something that I really love. And that really was the case with this one. It was just like, I was so hyper focused on every little thing that came across the screen that everything was glaring to me. Oh, is that dialogue any good? Oh, that's a weird clunky transition. Oh, what's going on over there? Oh, that's really cool. Oh, I remember that. And it was just like, too much. And I watched it again immediately after, and I had almost the same experience because it's Quantum Leap. So I had to give it some rest time. I let it sit not for 1 day, but for 2. And then I watched it again this morning before we recorded. I watched it twice, and damn it if I didn't just sink right into it. And I enjoyed it so much more because all of that nervous energy was finally gone. Like my fandom was finally calm, and I could just sit and watch the episode for what it is. And Matt, I had a lot of the same issues that you did with the pacing, breakneck speed, a lot of the issues with some of the character stuff, but because they have to introduce this vast world to a whole bunch of new viewers, potential new viewers, and get them on board with a very difficult concept. What I loved about it is that it is very much a continuation, and I feel like what we see there is the bones of a continuation that will honor the original in as much as it can while forging a new path, forging its own path. So that's, like I said, there are some shortfalls and there are some really great things. We'll get into that in more detail. But overall, I'm very happy and I have a positive feeling about where we could go with this.
Yeah, I think I had a kind of a similar experience to you. Look, I mean, we've been behind the show since day one. We've been rooting for it. I want it to be successful. I've just been like watching every little clip and trailer and promos, and I'm like, ooh, this is going to be so good. Just build up the hype, And we've done a few interviews by this point with people involved with the show, and they've all been so funny and charming and talked about really like their processes going into these characters, the thought that they've put into this. I love the idea of all of these characters in this plot that they're setting up, and I'm just rooting for them so much. And then I put this episode on. And the first time I watched it, I hated it.
Oh,
I hated it.
Oh, that must have been so bad. But let me take a moment. I'm so sorry. Oh, that must have been the worst feeling.
Mr. Krabs meme, right? Where it's spinning around me and I'm like, what is going on? I watched it with my husband and he's like, what is going on? So we watched an early access screener. We were lucky enough to be able to see it. And so I went through 700 different emotions after this, right? Like I'm angry, and then I'm in denial, and then I'm kind of depressed about it, and then I'm kind of like, well, I guess it's okay, and then I'm like, no, I'm so mad, and I'm sitting there and I'm just being a real turd. I'm being just a big turd. So I took a breather, and I waited a couple days. And I watched the episode again on my own, and I really pay attention to it. And I had a better experience. I found it better the second time around, and I came away feeling more hopeful about it. I agree with a lot of the points that you guys have brought up so far. There's still quite a bit of issues going on, but what I really want to do is take that stinky attitude away that I've had and just concentrate on the hopeful parts of it, because I think there's really a seed of something great here, and I don't think that they're beyond fixing it. A lot of pilots can be pretty rough.
Well, you know what occurred to me this morning as I was doing my fourth rewatch, it's almost like we've been waiting for this for so long. If you recall my reaction when we got that first full-length trailer, I got choked up. I got excited and sweaty. I literally had to step out of my office where I was working to get a breath of fresh air because I was so taken and so overwhelmed. Yeah. And I think that was the feeling that we all wanted from this first episode. And we got it. We just happened to get it in the trailer. The problem is that once you go beyond everything that's in the trailer, which is just reintroducing the universe and showing the new Accelerator Chamber and all that stuff, then it just becomes sort of an exercise in teaching people who don't know Quantum Leap about Quantum Leap. And it's giving them a basic leap and giving them all of the character introductions and giving them the universe and giving them some lore and giving them, Sam and Al a little bit. And really, it had a lot, like Matt said, it had a lot to do in 42 minutes. And I think
I kind of felt like I watched a 42-minute trailer, to be honest. It was so quick. There was just no time for anything. And that's not anyone's fault in particular. It's just they had too much to fit into 42 minutes. And I really feel like it didn't have enough time to service either of the stories, the Leap stuff or the stuff at the project. And I feel like I got more of that the second time around, more of the emotional beats. I know what they were going for, but I just feel like it really could have hit in ways that it didn't, because the editing was just so frantic. It was a little messy.
The first 3 or 4 minutes, my feelings particularly were, this feels like an extra long trailer, because the camera didn't stop moving. There was constant cutting around. There was music. There was like the epic shot of the project bursting to life. Basically, everything up to that leap did feel like just a trailer that, well, hang on, there should be another 3 or 4 minutes worth of material in here to pad this out. Yeah. And it took me a few watches to really kind of actually get into, okay, there's actually a bit of story here. There's an engagement party. There's people talking. There's stuff going on. I need to pay attention to this and not just go, ooh, shiny, which is all I was doing the first time around. I was like, okay, this is when's the episode going to start?
Yeah, I think the network really they made things difficult for them because comparing this to the earthquake episode, I did manage to read the script for that and see what they've changed specifically about the introductory elements, and this whole engagement scene, adding it to the beginning, adding this whole exposition dump. It really feels like they did not trust the audience to follow the story. Like it's really like it's the most clunky. This is the worst part of the episode to me is the exposition at the party. Within like 30 seconds, everyone is like, here is my name, here is my job, here is my function. And it's really clunky. I felt really bad for Namrisa Lee having to do the security of the party line because it was really clunky. It was really bad. And I feel like the engagement reveal would have hit much harder if they hadn't revealed it in the very beginning of the episode. So I was mixed on that.
It did feel like everyone that's ever worked in the corporate world, every meeting that we've ever sat through that starts off with, let's go around the table. Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the manager and I've been here for 13 years and I'm really happy to be here. Next.
I'm going to give it more of a pass than that.
They're talking about secret time travel projects at a party.
In the middle of a party.
Although,
I get it.
To be fair, that seems like something they would allude to in the original show. There was a lot of things going on at Project Quantum Leap where it's like, would you really be doing that though? Like, they're like, we're Xeroxing our butt at a party. Like, all right, I guess.
And now we're actually seeing the party.
Project there was. Yeah, we are seeing the party.
There was a disappointing lack of sex at that party. That was not true Quantum Leap. That was not honoring
There's
the
probably
original.
people in Ben's room doing that, and he's all annoyed because like they're having sex on my stuff. There's still not people in my party.
So that's when he was
I
like...
did like that aspect. I did like that Ben just hates parties.
Everyone's touching our stuff with their genitals. That's what he was getting at. I feel sorry for you, Ben. I get that. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like they should have just introduced everyone doing the jobs that they're doing and then trust the audience to follow along instead of this kind of clunky exposition, because Quantum Leap as a show really is a very exposition-heavy show every episode anyway, because you have to have the leap explanation. You have to kind of set all that up that way. But if you're introducing all of the project stuff, the world that they live in, you could just have them doing the things that they do and organically put that in there. You didn't really need to have this whole engagement party scene with everyone saying all this stuff, and they have like 2 seconds to do it, basically.
There's one particularly embarrassing part of exposition, and I'm sure we'll get onto the fun stuff in a bit, but if we're talking about the exposition, there's one particularly clunky part a bit later on where Mason just basically starts explaining the entire plot to Addison, and she has to stop him and say, I've been here since the start.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and then they continue. She's like, yeah, I've been here since the beginning, and then they keep telling the story.
Yeah. Bravo to Mason for managing those lines, because they deliver them so well. It's just when you stop and think, no, this is ridiculous.
They're designed for the trailer.
Yeah.
They're designed for the trailer.
Yeah, and again, we're watching a show for new viewers, not for Quantum Leap fans, and we just have to get over that because it's a lot.
But I mean,
it's a lot, you know?
But to say that, like, you know, the fans or the new people need to be introduced to it, I get it. And that's part of the reason that they did a new pilot. The network thought that it wasn't as accessible to new viewers. There's ways to introduce things organically into a story that isn't just stating it in the fashion that they do.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah, and I feel like also part of this is just they didn't have a lot of time because they were scrambling to do a new pilot. They'd already shot one and they have like a show to do. So they only have so much time to put into writing a whole new script, putting some of these same ideas into it, putting in what the network wants, what you have available. A lot of this is shot on the back lot. So I think like they really had to scramble to put this thing together.
I agree. And the seams do show, and at least they tried to disguise some of the clunky exposition as witty banter at a party until Mason had to just reiterate. I think there were 2 scenes where they had to just espouse about what is happening and the project, because it wasn't only that scene with Addison that they were discussing it, but then they had the scene where Ian is freaking out. Oh, I just need a breath. And then Ian has to say everything to Magic about how Ben is lost in the space-time stream or something like that. And it's just like, okay, we really want to make sure you guys are getting this, audience. Do you get it? Do you get it? So I understand why they were doing it. If you think about...
just to stick on that for a moment, because I actually liked that scene. It is an exposition dump. It's explaining the emotions rather than showing them. But at least it does show a bit of emotion, and it's... I don't know, I connected to it. I thought it was sweet, and I thought the mushroom stuff was hilarious, so there was that too. So I gave it a pass for that bit, definitely.
I feel like Mason Alexander Park really stole the show and was one of the parts I did enjoy even the first time around. I think because a lot of their character is very quippy lines that's very easy to put in, and like either it's funny or it's not. You know, comedy is subjective, but you can really quickly get that in there and be like that. Yeah, that was a funny bit. When it comes to the more emotional bits, there was that scene that opened with them crying. It was almost like a smash cut. It felt out of nowhere to me, and I felt really bad because like I know what the intention is with the character and what they're doing there, but there's no time to build up on any of the emotional moments. It was the same with at the very end with Addison looking at the phone in the midst of the remains of their engagement party, crying. I felt like it could have been such a gut-wrenching scene, but because they had to fit in all of this other stuff, I just didn't have time to connect with any of it. And I think maybe this is something that as the show goes on, when I look back at the pilot, I'll connect more to, because I know the characters better by this point. But just as an introductory thing, like I just feel like it missed the mark.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's fair. I think that when I got to know the characters a little bit better and was settled into the dynamic more, I think that the romance between Ben and Addison worked better on subsequent viewings, and I found myself really invested in it by the time I did my last rewatch, to the point where I could tell, okay, they had that whole scene where he's talking about quantum entanglement and the fact that science is romance. And I said, wait a minute, that is so star-crossed. That is so like Sam and Donna star-crossed.
Yeah, it's the poetry of physics.
Right, the poetry of physics.
Some people say that physicists can't be romantic. That was the kind of cornball dialogue I can get behind, though.
But
some people say physicists can't be romantic. But here, let me throw some romance at you.
But then you notice that they have them where they're holding hands and they have that close-up of their hands separating. And it's like, oh, that's the last time they touch.
Oh no, the gut wrench.
So, yeah, and I was just like, when I first saw it, I was just like, oh yeah, I get it. And then I was watching it, I was like, oh yeah, I get it.
Sniffle.
Hold me, Chris.
So, and maybe it's because at that point we had spoken to Caitlin, so I was already a little bit more invested in.
Yeah, that's the thing too. After these interviews, like, it makes me even more like, like, I already love them, so I want to love, what's going on in the show, and I feel like I can tell the thought and the love put into it. So, I'm rooting for it. I think like things will get better.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm very curious too. What's it going to be in the final episode versus what we saw? Because we saw a screener. It was not complete. From what I hear, a lot of screeners are kind of like this from NBC. Sometimes it's earlier versions, so I don't know what stage of completeness they are close to release or anything. But there were certain things in this, like there was Live Aid in here, just as an incidental, like establishing the time period. He was watching it on a car television, and there was a poster in the trailer for the episode. The poster was edited to just say Concert for World Hunger and not Live Aid. So I'm very curious if this was something that they were still clearing and got the rights to, and now it's in the pilot, or if it's something they initially put in there and they didn't get the rights to and had to take it out.
Yeah, it's funny. And that wasn't a car TV. He had what was once known as a Sony Watchman. It was Sony's follow-up to the Walkman. It was something that never really took off as a fad.
So, okay. Yeah. See, that shows I know nothing.
Yeah. Well, I lived through these times, so.
Okay. Well, yes. Good. You can explain the history to us.
I can explain that mystery to you. But, yeah, I mean, if we can maybe start just a little bit with some of the bigger picture stuff. I know we're getting into a lot of the character stuff, and I love that. But I had said up at the top of the show, I love the way that this started. It was just white text on a black screen, which is exactly where we left off in the original series, explaining that in 1995, Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap Accelerator and vanished. And it goes on from there, which to me gave me such a good feeling, because they established it immediately as a sequel. This is not a reboot. This is a season 6. And this is where we're gonna bring you right where you left off, Leapers. You might not get everything you want right in this first episode, because we got a lot of exposition to get through. You're not the only ones watching, but this is a sequel for you. And I was immediately heartened by that, and then immediately confused because Project Quantum Leap's now in Los Angeles, apparently. So this is a completely new project. This is a new Project Quantum Leap, based on Sam's work, but built somewhere differently, a completely different control room, completely different everything, which I think is a brilliant move. Because not only do you have a whole new project to play with and to explore as a leaper, but I'm waiting until they have to make this emergency trip to a defunct project in New Mexico. And you got
a lot of lofty dreams, man.
we get a big gummy bear control panel coming back to life, and we get a big blue orb just sparking back in with some snork. Oh, I can't wait. So
I wish. Yeah, that's one of the things that really bothered me, honestly. I feel like it's weird to me how much they gutted from the original show right down to the location. It was just weird to me because like there was not really a lot of elements that have remained from the original show outside of the core concept. It very much came off like just a remake to me, which is, it can be fine by itself too. I'm not against the idea of a remake either. I'm not against the idea of them continuing the story. And obviously there are some overarching story elements that are connected to the original Quantum Leap. I wish that there had been more stuff retained, even aesthetically, from what we saw. I didn't really understand why the project had this constant like diner evening mood lighting going on. I didn't really understand the aesthetic of the whole show, though, to be honest. This may be a modern TV issue. That's just me. But all of the color tinting, lots of greens and oranges. Maybe they're like, this is what sci-fi shows should look like. It was very ugly. It was very dark, not pleasant to the eye. To me, anyway.
Just in terms of that decision to shift to LA, we haven't seen any of what I'm about to say yet, but I'm hoping that there is a good plot reason for them being in LA, that we know we're going to see more of the people at the project. Are we going to see them out and about doing things outside the project? I don't know if that's something.
That's probably the reason they did it.
That's something I'm interested in seeing, but if they don't do that, then it's kind of a pointless move. And we know that in New Mexico there was like Sex World and stuff. I mean, they still could have done that, but I guess maybe if they want to do something that's a bit more grounded in reality, then fine. But that's going to be interesting and different if they actually have like the whole project team going out for dinner at some LA restaurant that is actually recognizable. It's going to be strange if they do that, but if they don't do that, then it's a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there are parts of LA that you can fake into being New Mexico. Yeah. That's what they did in the original show.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, there's parts of the desert you can go to. Like, there's you can just go to parts of the city that could be New Mexico or LA. You know, it probably was just for a practical reason though, because they want to do. If they said 50-50 with the project, we'll see how they end up actually going, but they do want to have a heavy emphasis on that. It probably was just for practical reasons, so they don't have to keep disguising it as something else.
Can I just, sorry, this is completely off on a tangent, but I know this isn't going to come up naturally otherwise. One of my favourite things, it's just you mentioned disguising, one of my favourite things in the original series is spotting them going to different parts of America, but there still being palm trees in the background. And and we saw in the press screener, we've seen a lot of like half complete CG, and you can see there's comments where they're digitally removing palm trees from all over the place. So there's a whole new thing to look out for now.
Yeah,
not
that ended up in the trailer in some of this stuff, because there were people on Twitter pointing that out. They're like, a lot of palm trees over there, huh? So maybe they took note from that. I don't know.
I'm going to miss spotting them, but I do like seeing the half-completed effect, so hopefully we'll get more of those press screeners.
My favorite part of the half-completed effects, and assuming this is not going to be in the final episode, the Getty Images watermark.
Yes! I saw that, Allison, and I thought of you, but I didn't want to spoil it for you, so I didn't mention it, but that's brilliant.
So you guys might not know what we're talking about out there in podcast land, because the wet cut that we saw, when Addison holds the hand link up and the holograph of Sam shows up, and she explains
there's a holograph
who
of
Sam is.
Sam because she's talking about what happened on the previous project, and there's some promo images of Scott Bakula.
Right. And so then they cut to a start where it's just sort of off in the corner of the screen, and you can see a headshot of Scott that has a Getty Images logo like pasted right across it. So obviously it was a placeholder until they get the final one in. But yeah, it was very funny. I don't know. Guys, I mean, I know it's funny for us, but I don't know if this is the kind of stuff as we go on and we see these screeners. Should we point out this stuff? Because no one's ever going to see it but us.
Super funny.
Maybe we'll keep that for an after show or something.
Here's the thing that bugs me, right? I'm good at dunking on things because I don't put in any real work on these shows. So, like, I can be like, haha, that's funny that ended up in there. What's that effect all about? But when we're looking at screeners, we don't know if this is the completed effect. We don't know what the completed episode is going to look like till later. I'm sure I will watch this again, to give another look in the completed form. But as of recording these, I can't be like, I don't know about these fire effects, because I don't know if that's the completed effect. Yeah. Even some of the song choices may not be the final song choices.
Oh, that would be a tragedy.
Interesting to see.
Yeah, that would be a tragedy.
Yeah, they do a lot of needle drops in this, which I think helped a little bit. But I do think that they, the fact that this takes place in the 80s was pretty irrelevant.
Oh, yeah.
There were some 80s stuff, but I feel like especially for the pilot of your time travel show, you really need to make it specific to that particular decade. And then later on in other episodes, it doesn't have to always be about that. But it felt like it kind of missed the mark as a time travel show in that aspect as well.
As someone, again, who lived through the 80s, I'm going to give you a dirty secret about the 80s. There is nothing remarkable about the 80s. If you're going to do a time travel show,
80s. You can see ugly 80s and have it be the 80s, though.
Yeah, but
it doesn't have to be all the neon.
There's
and the,
just been a recent, not really so recent. I feel like ever since The Wedding Singer, when Adam Sandler did that movie, like this sort of nostalgia bloom for the 80s took off, and there was nothing really great about the 80s to harken back to. And if you're going to do a time travel show,
Those Girls Are Easy was a documentary.
Oh, classic.
It's a great movie. But if you're going to do a time travel show, like, the place you want to go to least is the 80s. And I feel bad that they're constrained with Ben's lifetime, where a lot of the leaps are going to take place necessarily in the 80s. I mean, the 50s looks like the 50s. The 60s looks like the 60s. The 70s looks like the 70s.
The 80s has an aesthetic that you can go to. And I know this from like pictures and videos, like home videos and things from people actually in the 80s. There is an aesthetic to it, and there are things specific to that decade, just the same as there are things specific to the year 2015. You could place something in there and then say, like, this is something specific to 2015. That's not that far removed from where we're at now. But what I'm saying is, this leap in particular could have taken place anywhere, anytime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, but it was a generic lightweight leap, and we've spoken about that ever since we discovered it was going to be a dual heist plot. We all went in there, I think, expecting it to be fairly lightweight on plot so that they could focus on introducing the characters and introducing the concepts, and that's exactly what we got. It was a lightweight plot that, yes, could have been lifted and dropped into the 70s or the 60s or today.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was the network wanting more action or something. Mm-hmm. Maybe that was why they suggested this. I'm not really sure why they wanted to redo the plot entirely from the Earthquake one. I get why they would ask for things to be more expository and more dumbed down for some people, but it feels like the leap itself changing is because they're like, we want something action-packed to really get people into the beginning, a kind of Bond-esque Ocean's 11 kind of thing. And I'm not really sure it was that successful in that element either, and this is just a time issue, because you have to introduce all of these different elements. You're going like, what are they doing before the leap? And then what are they doing after he's leapt? And then, like, how does he react to everything? And then what are they doing at the project? And also, what was this person doing talking to Ben? And then what was this ring all about? And then what's with the security person? And then what's going on over here? And then there's a bomb. And then there's and then, like, you get all of this stuff together. It's like, this would have been, if it was movie length, it might have been more successful. I feel like Ben's character especially really suffered, and it should have been really focused on his character because he is the main character of the show. After he first leaps, Addison shows up pretty much almost immediately. You don't really get a lot of him adjusting to the leap or trying to figure out what's going on. And then when she leaves, we follow her. And I feel like we missed kind of some crucial time in the first leap to really understand how Ben goes about problem solving or how he reacts to things and how he feels in the situation, because he has to swallow a lot in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. One of the biggest failings that I saw was that, I'm a hologram from the future, and he seems like nonplussed. Okay, what do I do? Drive this van? Hologram from the future?
He just rolls with it so easy, and that really bummed me out, I mean, and this is not Raymond Lee's fault at all, because I think Raymond Lee is great. Yeah. I've seen him in Kevin Can F Himself. He's fabulous in that show. I know he's a very capable actor, and I saw a lot of bits and pieces in this that really made me excited to see what was going to happen because I see like seeds of things there.
Yeah, there was just not a lot of incredulity on his part, and that was strictly it was like a casualty of the pacing. It had to we just have to gloss over this part that they spent so much time in Genesis because we don't have a 2-hour TV movie premiere to do this. We have to do this at episode length. I don't want to say this was quick and dirty, but it was as fast as they could make it. Without it being quick and dirty. Yeah. And there were plenty of pauses, again, to have like, hey, this is what's going on. Hey, this is what's happening. It's just that when they got into the action parts of it, they were really, really, I think, concerned with keeping that part of the show moving. And I feel like that is the network stepping in and not trusting the audience, saying, hey, you got a lot of talking here. You got a lot of heavy concepts. Get some gunplay in here. We need an explosion. We, get something to keep them going.
The explosion felt so incidental.
Yeah.
So weird.
Cool car chase, though. Cool car chase, even if it was just to add some action early on.
You know what surprised me about the car chase? So they showed in the trailer the bit where he doesn't know how to use stick shift, and I thought it was super funny in the trailer. In the episode, I didn't think it was funny. Maybe I just I was in the headspace where I'm like, what is going on at this point? I think maybe it's timing, but I did find it funny when he said, that pretzel cart came out of nowhere. That was funny. And like, I think like watching it a second time around, I did catch more of Ben's lines that I liked and glimpses of his personality there that they can build on when they have more time for that sort of thing.
I love that. I meant to mention the clutch was a little bit sticky, or however he says the line. There's some lovely little bits in there for him.
Yeah,
it's true.
And we do catch some bits about who he is. It's weird because they show him at the engagement party before he leaps, but he's in like a very fancy suit because they're it's a fancy party. But we find out he's really not that kind of guy. Like he doesn't like parties. He's not really a speechy guy, and he is more of a work at the computer and a t-shirt kind of guy. And all of a sudden he's this James Bond punching people out kind of guy. So they're establishing some things that they can build on later. It is a little weird though that we don't really get to see who he is. We get to see kind of some things that he's not that comfortable with when we see him in the present.
Yeah, the only thing that I think that they went out of their way to sort of establish at the party, and I guess then Addison bolsters it with that t-shirt comment, is that Ben is somewhat introverted, which is going to, I think, maybe make an interesting dynamic if he's got to be someone that purposely interacts with people and changes their minds the way a leaper has to. I don't know that they established it very well, but they were putting it out there.
He seemed to very easily slip into this. I feel like there should have been a little more stumbling. But you could see him working through some of it, and again, like they just don't have a lot of time for it.
Yeah, and that again, that's the casualty of the fast pace. It'll be because it's like get to the tango, get to the fun, get to the sexy. Get to the tux.
Get to the tango.
It'll be interesting if they explore and acknowledge that more as the show goes on, because we've spoken about this with Sam in the past, that he was a mega nerd, and he obviously, and particularly in the novels, we find out he was quite an insular character pre-leaping, but then in the purpose of leaping he has to come out of his shell, and he just does, and that's never really addressed in the original series. He's just this charming guy that everyone loves. So it would be nice if they take a moment to address that, and the little moments that we saw in the first episode were good.
Yeah, I mean, like Sam, we don't get to see what he's like pre-leaping, but we get to see him struggle. Like he has weaknesses, even though he's a jack of all trades. He's a lot of things that he can do, and he can really roll with the punches pretty well. But there is sort of a struggle there, and we get to see who Sam is pretending to be these other people. I don't know if we got as much about who Ben is pretending to be other people. They had the reveal where he was secretly an undercover cop the whole time, and it feels like it wasn't much of a struggle there, and it wasn't... I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of different reveals here and different turns in the story that didn't really shift a lot of the tone of what was happening.
Yeah, it's almost like drama by the numbers. You have like the third act turn and the reveal, and I feel like the whole "Are you wearing a wire?" line, while it played in well with him talking to nobody,
it was exactly. He had to open his shirt.
Gotta rip that shirt off, baby.
You get past the pilot, and they're like, "Get that shirt open."
Come on, Raymond. Come on, step up.
I guess they did it in the original show too. They're continuing the legacy.
Right.
Like we need to get him.
We were promised throwbacks. We were promised throwbacks, and we got throwbacks. We got a shirtless Leaper. Whew.
Yeah, we got a lot of throwbacks here. I mean, I what I liked is it's sort of like they set up the same dynamics. Ben is lost. The Pentagon is threatening to shut the project down. We got to stall for time, which was, I think, like that was a heavy theme in the first season of the original series. So we're sort of right back there. And the fact that both Sam and Al are referenced in this show, and when we see them, they're both wearing what they were wearing in mirror image. So it's almost like a visual continuation of this is the last time we've seen these characters. Sam's in his brown jacket, and Al is in his admiral's uniform. So I think that was just like a nice little homage. Ben asked the question that they ask. This is ridiculous. How can helping somebody cause me to leap? Oh, we don't know. We're trying to figure this out. We're scratching our heads too.
Whatever the crap.
All right. And then now this is funny. It's going to be one of those things that we saw on the screener that they kind of flubbed, where they reveal that Ben can speak several languages, but you can tell that they have someone dubbing over the word several instead of who knows how many they were actually going to say.
Yeah, what if they said 7? Like Sam knew 7 as well.
I think it was 7, yeah.
Yeah, but it was so funny. It was just like, you speak several languages. Hey, I think I can speak several languages. I think also that's them keeping the door open because they don't know what they want to do yet.
Yeah.
You want to play kind of fast and loose with what you establish for the character and not tie yourself to one particular thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if they'd have stuck with 7, there'd be some of us, myself included, sat there counting, and the second he speaks an 8th language, it'd be like, yeah, I got to write to the network.
He changed the timeline. He changed the timeline, and he speaks another language. I believe we had to do that in some of the novels. Like, I don't know, why does Sam know this now? I don't know. He speaks Russian now. I don't know.
I haven't been this incensed since I started counting the shuttles on the Voyager. Anyway.
I wanted to talk about Addison a little bit here.
Okay.
Some of the hologram stuff. So Addison, I don't think we get a lot of who Addison is when she is not very sad and scared for Ben, which she should be at this point in the story. But I'm not really sure we have a great handle on who her character is when she's not emotionally distraught, personality-wise, who is she? I think like there's little glimpses into that where we can see like bits of humor in there. Yeah, obviously, like, she's got a very close relationship with everyone at the project and with Ben. I do wish that they hadn't dressed her and Ben basically in the same outfit, which is just a gray shirt and some jeans. I feel like they need to make her stick out a little more. She doesn't have to dress like Al, but I do think as the hologram, there should be a little bit of disconnect from the environment and something to also keep track of her a little better, because she did kind of blend in sometimes.
Yeah.
Allison, it's his and hers clothing. It's what you've got contractually. You've got to do that when you get married.
Why is it so great?
When you move in with your husband, you're going to be doing his and hers stuff as well.
We have never done.
We will never be wearing
years.
matching gray outfits.
Never ever have we done that, Matt. I don't know where you're going, but wow. But Allison, you're right about that 100% in the sense that we don't know very much about Addison, but we have this shocking reveal. She was supposed to be the Leaper.
Yeah.
So that points to the fact that she is probably hyper competent in many, many different areas, because they had her pegged to go on these missions. So that to me is like, oh, wow, let me know more about that. That's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that also kind of sets up that she was the one preparing for this whenever they would get it ready, and Ben wasn't. So even if he didn't have the memory loss, he is not prepared for this kind of situation. So that could lead to some interesting possibilities in the story. I guess like the same thing sort of happened with Sam. You never really prepare for that kind of thing, but I mean, that also helps set up like a better function for her as well. Much like Al, she has all of this experience and all of this stuff to draw from, and there was a story reason why they picked her for this particular thing, because she was supposed to be able to know and do all of these things.
It's almost serendipitous that Ben is the one stuck in time, because had she leapt, who knows what she would remember. A lot of training and instinct might have come to the surface, but they didn't expect to have the memory loss, or they thought they were going to be able to mitigate it based on some of the dialogue between Ian and Addison.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they knew it was a possibility, though. Like Ben knew before he leaped. They talked about that, but obviously they didn't think they were going to be leaping now, because they knew that was a strong possibility and they weren't ready to test it on anyone.
Right. But this way, Addison keeps all of her skills intact and they can actually be of use, like as exemplified with the bomb thing. Even though they didn't have the tools to defuse the bomb, she's like, oh yeah, you cut the red wire. Like she knew what, if she were there and she had like something to snip it with, she would have been able to do it.
I think this also like helps that she'll know on the fly how to answer certain things without just consulting Ziggy. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes there's situations where you just have to react in the moment. You don't have time to do any research or any of that stuff. You just have to draw from your experience.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to turn back into that Al knows everything trope, except hopefully just a little less clunky than, oh yeah, back in the orphanage when I had a cockroach named Kevin, I was also a trapeze artist.
If Addison starts that way, back in the orphanage, my cockroach named Kevin.
They're definitely setting up the same thing with her, but maybe a touch more believable.
Sure.
Maybe, yeah.
Let's hope.
I mean, and that's not the only trope we get. We get Addison saying, Ziggy says there's a 99% chance that if you make that 9, and he says, I don't care what Ziggy says. I'm going to ignore Ziggy's advice and save Ryan, and it's just like, okay, well, we've been there before. That's for sure. That's the shades of Sam right there. But it was also a nice character turn for Ben, right? Because it's him sort of finally taking the initiative on the leap and doing what he feels is right instead of just reacting. So I thought that was sort of a crucial moment in the show.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I noticed too? They refer to Ziggy as it. They don't have any gendered pronouns. So I'm wondering if they know that Ziggy is as intelligent as she is. Like, maybe they don't know. Maybe that's going to be a reveal, as they work with Ziggy. Like, maybe she starts speaking, or maybe there's some other things. I don't know if that's a direction they're going to go in with the character. Or with the character. Yeah, because Ziggy's a character.
Yeah.
But, they just refer to Ziggy as it. Right now, it is just sort of a computer that they can use to consult for the leaps. They even say, like, the computer controls the leaps.
Yes.
They say that Ziggy does. So I don't know if they also don't know exactly how it works, or if that's how the show is just going to say it instead of God, time, fate, or whatever the computer decides.
Yeah, we were missing the heavy God element that was present in the pilot of the original Quantum Leap. They completely eschewed all of that. Mainly because, number one, they didn't spend a lot of time like navel gazing about why and where and how. This is just how it is because this is how it was for Dr. Beckett. And the closest we got was how can helping someone? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I would be very surprised if they reintroduce that element of the original series into this, but who knows?
You notice that was part of the character description way back when it was Ben Prasad, that he was a religious person, but we don't see any of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess we don't get to see anything really.
Exactly.
So
we haven't had a chance
to see if they wanted to.
Give it time.
Yeah. I think that's something that might evolve. And let's hope that if it does, they start wrestling with some of the same questions that we've had as fans for these many years. I mean, we do know that there is some kind of force that is looking over Sam based on what we saw in Mirror Image. So I would hope that it manifests in some capacity as the show establishes itself. Not right away, of course, but something. I think that the biggest failing, what I loved, I got to tell you, Allison, I know that you didn't like Back at the Project. It was a little too gloomy for you. I loved the new Accelerator. I thought that it was just
the Accelerator looks good.
It was cool. Awesome with all those.
I like seeing the Fermi suit, the little feety pajamas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
the Fermi suit was amazing. I really loved the design of the new imaging chamber with all of the hexagonal,
the honeycomb,
like the honeycomb feature that I guess is what generates the hologram for her. I thought the new control room was. It's almost akin to New Trek. For new listeners who are just listening to our show for the first time, we're going to reference Star Trek a lot. We just do. But it's almost like the difference between, say, like the carpeted look of the Enterprise D, which is homey and familiar, as opposed to everything you see on New Trek, like from Disco. Everything is so hard and shiny now because that's sci-fi. And I feel like they're just fitting into the aesthetic for a modern audience with that control room. Does it lack personality? 100%. Could it be any generic control room anywhere? 100%. I hope that as they get Ziggy more online, they incorporate more color, more flash.
Ziggy is like redesigning herself.
Exactly.
Like, get this out of here. But excuse me, gummy bear cubes are nothing.
Yeah, well, there you go. And then we get the new hand link. Now, I'm going to dub this the hockey puck hand link. There, I said it. I said it first.
Nice.
And now it's going to stick. All right?
Yeah, hockey puck.
We got the calculator hand link, we got the gummy bear hand link, and now we got the hockey puck hand link.
You're welcome,
yeah,
fandom.
I think they made a good choice redesigning it from the Earthquake pilot. The pictures we saw looked kind of like a Pokedex or something, which I didn't mind either, but I think like this gives it a much more unique design.
Yeah, it felt like the one that we saw in the Earthquake stills was like just a jack that you can slide your smartphone into, which I guess would make sense in a modern context because everybody's got these handheld computers now. Why not just jack it into something that can talk to Ziggy? But that's just not Quantum Leap. What I loved about the hockey puck hand link is that it's got, just like the gummy bear hand link, zero functionality, apparently.
Yeah.
All she's got to do is...
It's weird and makes no sense. That's perfectly Quantum Leap.
It's iconic.
I guess it's got like...
It beams holograms, so that
yeah,
will be
it beams
handy.
holograms.
And
yeah. So
there's
I don't see it like a screen or nothing, but you never saw a screen really.
Well, I think that little middle part, right? That could be a screen because that's where the hologram came up from. Like the little, the center of the puck.
There's some very cool specific stuff that the hologram projection's going to be used for in the Earthquake episode if the pilot script that we've read plays out. So, yeah, I think although all it seems to do is beam holograms, there's potentially some cool stuff coming up with that in the future.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, let's put it this way: it's such a blank slate; they can have it do anything, and it's as plausible and implausible equally. So it's just like, okay, great. You know, it works perfectly.
I think like that's the how it should be. And we saw in the original show they did use the hand link for holographic projection sometimes. Like there was the dinosaurs in Another Mother. There was a Little Miracle when they were projecting the news footage onto the building and all of that stuff. So that was a capability that they had. There was occasionally things that they would do that it was weird that they didn't do more often. It probably was because of budget reasons.
Yeah.
So it is kind of cool to see the stuff that they can do. You know, you mentioned New Trek. I really hope this doesn't become New Trek because Quantum Leap is, at least the original show, is kind of sci-fi as an aside.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a lot of weird elements to the show, but it's really not this kind of high-tech sci-fi CG heavy lore-based show. There's a lot more lore in this, and I did enjoy whenever we got bits of it in the original show. I wanted to see more stuff of what's going on in the future and have them play a little bit more with that. But I hope that this new show does not become entangled in this, there must be this big epic lore element to it, because it feels disconnected to me. I want to see the leaps, and I want to see a connective tissue there. That was something the original show didn't get to do as much. I like there being a connective tissue. Things matter from episode to episode. Emotional beats continue from story to story. That's really the something about modern television that I think will really suit this well.
Yeah, that's from everything that we've heard from the people we've spoken to, that family dynamic that they tried to establish in the party in the first scene is really where the heart of the show is going to lie when we get back to the project stuff. It's how do these characters interact with each other? How do these characters play off of one another? And what are these relationships going to be as they grow? They also gave us a little bit of a glimpse of a background between Magic and Jen. It was almost like a Sam and Al kind of moment where Jen said something like, no one would hire me. I was washed up until you gave me another chance. And, you know, it's like, oh, okay. So they have a little bit of a backstory too. I wonder what's going on there. You know, resignation denied. Now get to work.
Don't. What a terrible way to introduce a character.
You know, but there's a seed.
There's a seed.
If you want to,
there.
honestly, if you want to crap on something, this is my biggest problem. We'll get to the Janice thing. We'll get to the Al thing. But Ben is in the freaking Accelerator Chamber. It's amazing. We pan right in and no leap. Where was the leap? It just goes right to his eye in the van.
It was comically quick. Him just bolting from the party. I joked about when we first heard the description of this episode, I'm like, it sounds like he's just at the engagement party and he's like, whoop, gotta leap, and then runs out. And then he does. And it's as comically abrupt as I joked about. Like, he runs out there and then we see this very quick shot. It was even more abrupt than it was in the original show, and it was abrupt in the original show. Just like Sam's leaping, and then you see him arms akimbo, like, leap me out.
I was going to say, we didn't see the leap in the original. This is only this is the same thing. Yes, admittedly paced a lot quicker, but
all right. But the thing is, I mean, if you're in the Accelerator Chamber and you're transitioning to where they are, like, you're right, Matt. When in Genesis, Sam wakes up in bed. We did it. We did what? So we didn't see him leap in, but now we know what a leap is supposed to look like. And he's in the Accelerator Chamber, and they go from the Accelerator Chamber to him in the van. Like, right? Don't they cut right from one to the other?
Yeah, so, I think it was meant to be abrupt like that. The cut from him to the van, I think, was fine. It was just the cut from the party to that and then to that. It was just all very kind of messy.
I'm talking specifically about where's my leap effect. Where's my leap effect? And they did it at the end, but then at the very end, once again, when he's on the shuttle, when he's on Atlantis, they start with his eye. He doesn't really leap into the shuttle.
Right, because I think part of that's because they've changed the structure.
Yeah.
Because you get stuff in between, which I don't know. The pacing is very weird. I wish that the episode had began with him just on the leap. Just he has leapt in and he has no idea what's going on. And then as he discovers what's going on, he meets Addison and he's figuring this out as we're figuring this out. And that would introduce us to the characters, you know, and then like we can see bits and pieces of what really happened that night as we go through the episode or even through the season. And I think that would have been better to be like, okay, so we're starting with a blank slate, just the same as Ben. And then we get to discover this world as it unfolds. And I think it would have given them more time also to explore some of these elements that they just had to rush through.
Well, that's exactly what they did in Genesis. So I feel like maybe they were trying to make this their own. You know what? Maybe they weren't. I'm just going to go.
Genesis had a little bit at the beginning with Al and Sam leaping.
Yeah, they did, but it was
they did have a little bit. So you knew immediately Sam was leaping and he time traveled, and then But if they just started with this guy with amnesia who just doesn't know what's going on, why he has this weird reflection. I mean, obviously, you know what Quantum Leap's about. This is a continuation, but let's say that there are new viewers, and they expect a lot of new viewers watching this who don't know Quantum Leap. That's an intriguing notion. What's going on here? You know, it's a time travel show, I guess, but what really happened? How did he end up here? And then you get the reveal like, oh, he leaped without telling anyone. That's like a reveal there. Oh, he's engaged to her. Oh no, like all of this stuff is just kind of thrown out in the beginning before you have time to really care about any of it because you don't know who anyone is.
True. Yeah.
I mean, they tell you I'm security of the party, you know, but I mean, that doesn't really help. Yeah. I don't think. I don't want to be too mean about the Jen character. Nanrissa Lee seems like a lovely lady, great actress. This is a character archetype I just don't care for. I don't care for the angry security person. I never find those stories very interesting. I just feel like it cuts out time that could be spent on other characters. I get functionally what her character is for, but I really wish that they had compressed some of these characters into one, maybe given Addison some more stuff to do because it's personal, trying to find out what happens with Ben. It just kind of feels like it's spread out between too many cooks at this point.
But Jen did play a little bit of a role back at the project in the sense that this was a little clunky. She was monitoring the explosion. She saw like the newspaper, nobody was killed. And then talking about the Hope Diamond being stolen or something. And it was never stolen, and Project Blue Glass.
Well, Magic brought up that.
Right. But now then Jen,
in response to her.
Right. But then Jen can now hack the DOD.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, these are things that... Yeah, she even says like, oh, I jumped in while you guys were doing this and I looked this up. That's not even what her job is supposed to be. Already it feels like they're coming up with reasons to include her because they don't really know what to do with this character. And I feel bad because, again, like Nanrissa Lee, she's doing a fine job. Like it's nothing against her. I just feel like this character, they thought of the one idea for the overarching storyline and didn't really think how this plays out with anything else, because they could have had hacking to the DOD, given that to Ian. Ian's the computer person. They could have had Addison maybe looking over security footage and seen some things. They could have had Magic looking into it. I feel like there's a lot of different characters that could serve the same function, and you could still see security people there. It's not like, I mean, like, it makes sense that they would have security, but it just feels like it's just too many people coming up with things they need to do.
Well, I mean, Jen does play a critical role at the end, though, for I think what was basically the biggest reveal of the episode, which is that Ben is working with Janice Calavici, Al's daughter. So that one threw me for a loop. I know that there have been spoilers floating around. I've tried to remain steadfastly spoiler free, and this one managed to slip in under my radar. I didn't know that they were going to be introducing like a descendant of Al as a character. So this was the mysterious Janice that we had heard about in the casting. That was very specific on it was the only one that called for a very certain type. They said like a white woman in their 30s. Well, obviously it has to be because it's Al's daughter, Al and Beth's daughter. So I'm really intrigued to see the backstory between Janice and Ben and like what exactly is going on, because on the rewatch, I know that you were sort of focusing more on Addison's reaction to this, Allison. You had mentioned it before. We just get to see her being sad, looking at Ben's voicemail or his video message. But wow, what is going on? Like this gets into, I'm a lore geek. So this is the connective tissue that is bringing like the old project into the new project. And this is the stuff that I'm going to be watching for the most. So did you guys know that turn was coming, or?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I guessed it. But this is me lurking around seeing other stuff, so I'm not saying this is a predictable thing. I think it'll be a surprise to a lot of people. Yeah, she's the first shot that they have. They do.
I only knew, just to be clear, I only knew because it was in the pilot script that I read a while back. I'm not claiming to have been able to predict it, and I'm not saying it wasn't an amazing twist, because when I read it, I thought it was an amazing twist. But yeah, so it was in the episode. I was waiting for it to come.
Okay.
The first shot that we see, we get that, and again, I don't know if they're going to edit any of this for the final release, but the first shot we see the text that says Sam Beckett never leaves home, all this stuff, and then we get like computers, tilted angles, green lights, red lights, close-ups. I'm hacked in. And I'm like, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed.
That whole sequence looked so cheap. Like
it just felt very rote.
I was expecting her to start mumbling something about the pesky Power Rangers. It really felt... I was like, oh God, is this what the show's going to be? And then they very quickly moved on, and there was the aerial shot of Santa Monica. And it's like, okay, all right, that's good. We have some money. But those opening shots, I hope, look a little bit better in the finished version.
You guys are so jaded.
Yeah, well, it's not even the way that I think it's just the presentation bothers me. I don't really. I like that this is connected to the old show. I don't mind them connecting things or even having Elle's daughter involved. There's just this hardened edge to these types of stories, the like espionage, cloak and dagger, computer hacker types. Everyone's in the shadows. What's going on? The secret mission? I don't know. This feels very disconnected to Quantum Leap to me. I just don't. And honestly, I don't want to hear about Al being dead all the time. Maybe this sounds harsh. I feel like it's great they're trying to honor the character, but I just feel like, I don't know, there's a different way to approach this that maybe I would have liked better. It just has this kind of hardened edge to it that just... I don't know. They're going to have to win me over on this overarching plot, but we've only seen a little bit of it, so it's possible I'll feel differently later.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you willing to give it a chance?
Yeah, I'm not going to dismiss it offhand, but what I've seen so far, I was embarrassed. And a lot of this was a little incomprehensible, to be honest. I was a little confused, and I've looked up so many spoilers. I've been following this from day one. I was a little confused by some of it.
In what respects?
Just the editing was so frantic.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't follow it.
Yeah, I noticed that, and on my second watch, there were still story beats that I missed because it was so frantic, and I didn't care because I was still just wrapping my head around the characters. I did watch specifically on my subsequent watches to try and make a concerted effort to follow the through line of the plot, and they did do it fine. They just do it very, very quickly. So there weren't, any real gaffes with that. The only real gaffe to me, if you're going to point out a significant story weakness, it's the trope that I hate. Guy is criminal because sick. My wife is sick. My kid is going to be, I get it. Yeah, but it's just like, he's the hitman with a heart of gold. Oh no. And
that was the weakest element. I watched this with my husband. He didn't even know why they were stealing the Hope Diamond. He didn't know what the Leap plot was because it was so quick, them going over the reasoning behind it, and just it fell kind of flat because, again, they don't have a lot of time for it, but it is very stereotypical.
Yeah. So, I mean, I again, that to me just factory TV plot so that we can establish the premise. And I'm glad that we got it out of the way because this is the kind of story that we've seen on almost every TV show. And Quantum Leap is no stranger to doing stock plots. We make fun of it quite often for doing stock plots. Sure. I'm glad that they got the criminal because sick kid out of the way, like right out the gate. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. I hope.
Yeah, you don't know if it won't come up again.
Yeah, I know. Shh, just give me this hope, Allison.
There was no mafia involved this time.
Not yet. Not yet. They're coming.
The mafia will be there.
Some of it did feel very CSI, though. I gotta say, some of this did look like a procedural type thing. You got like the blown out windows, and everyone's doing the meeting about the fake Hope Diamond, and then they got to check if he's wearing a wire, and the color correction's all kind of murky and weird, and I don't know.
Yeah, but all of it led to Ben in that gorgeous tux doing a tango. So
he did look good, and he looked good in the tux.
Shades of Scott. I mean, this is Seabride all over again. The tango, the tux. Just look, everybody. It's not just about car chases and weird science that you don't understand. He's handsome and he dances. Just put a rose in her teeth.
Maybe they were just trying to introduce everything a little bit in the pilot. They're like, he's kind of suave, he's kind of funny, he's kind of there's action stuff, there's some emotional beats, there's there's a story about a little girl being sick, so there's some of these human stories, there's some of the, I don't know, maybe that was kind of the idea, but it was they threw everything out there.
Yeah.
Just a lot to throw into a short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. It was really crammed in. It tried to be too many things all at once, and it just became sort of a jumbled, mixed bag. But I go back to that feeling that I had when I first saw the trailer. they're doing it right. Like they're introducing all of the concepts. They're not screwing with any of the concepts, really. I feel like they will try to do justice to the original show. And I guess if we're going to wrap up, we've been going for a long time. Those are pretty much my final thoughts. Adequate setup for Quantum Leap for people who don't know Quantum Leap. And listen, Genesis was spoon-feedy and point by point. This was spoon-feedy and point by point, just written with a more modern sensibility as far as I'm concerned. They just put in some car chases instead of airplanes exploding. And, this was how spoon-feeded this was. Well, I saved him. What do we do? What do I do now? And then Addison says, now you leap. And then he steps back and he actually leaps.
Yeah. He's like, he took the cue.
Right?
Yeah.
But you see, get it, audience? This is what happens. He saved the day. I gave the epilogue. Now you leap.
Maybe that's telling us something about Ben. Maybe he's whipped. All right, Addison. Anyway. I'll leap now, thanks. Okay. Get the frying pan. The legacy continues.
Here we go. Man. Or you could say Ben's leaping himself. Oh yeah, I do leap now. Watch.
That's true. I don't buy that the computer's doing it. I'm not sure why they think the computer's doing it, because they don't seem to know why anything's happening. But maybe they are discovering something about Ziggy. Mm-hmm. They don't really know exactly how everything works yet. My final thoughts. I feel better about the pilot than when I first saw it. I'm trying to have fun with this. I have some misgivings about certain things, but I feel like a lot of pilots are kind of awkward. You have to have time to really get to know the characters. So I'm hopeful for what they're going to do, because I feel like there's a good basis here. I really do love the idea of what they've done here, and there's little bits and pieces that are intriguing to me. So I'm really hoping that they can expand on those things and smooth out some of these wrinkles.
Yeah, and I feel very optimistic about the future as well. I wish this could have had a bit more time to breathe. If this had been streaming only, I think just an extra 10 or 15 minutes would have done the trick. Mm-hmm. But we know with network, it either has to be an hour or 2 hours. There's really not much of an in-between, and they went with an hour. But I immediately loved several of the characters. I think the others will come into their own. But I love Addison and Ben and Ian. And that is enough to me to say this is going to be a good show. We just need to get into the flow of it and get into the flow of the concept and the heart of the Leap stories, which I don't think we really saw yet.
Perfect point. And I can't believe I get to say this. And I think... that is our review of the first new episode of Quantum Leap in 30 years.
Hey.
In the books. Whoa.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah. But it's not the end. It's not the end. Everybody stay tuned. We're going to throw to a break. But when we come back, we are going to be speaking with Caitlin Bassett. Stay tuned.
On the latest episode of Leaps Elsewhere.
Oh, we gonna have some fun on this podcast, guys.
Today we'll be talking about the NCIS New Orleans Season 1 episode, Chasing Ghosts, that features both Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell.
We're all going to talk about the accent, let's face it.
The Backson. Dean Stockwell is T-Bone.
Dean was really solid. I believe that this was his very last TV appearance.
It feels like he spent a day on a boat and got to hang out with his old friend Scott Bakula again.
This is the complete wrong role for Scott Bakula.
He did a lot of squinty acting in this, did Scott.
How many Navy crimes can you come up with? Apparently, if you're Donald Belisario, 10 million.
Yeah, I was glad that Scott took a moment to explain to us that discrimination hasn't ended.
It's probably the most dynamic episode of television that Scott Bakula stars in that revolves around an anti-Semitic lynching.
A ringing endorsement. I think we're all in agreement. Everyone, tune in to NCIS New Orleans.
To find out how to hear this and other Patreon exclusive shows, go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. That's patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast.
It's the way they roll in New Orleans.
But is it?
Maybe.
The QLP is brought to you by listeners like you. Please go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast and give as much as you can. For as little as $1 a month, you can be a contributor to the Quantum Leap Podcast. It goes to covering our server cost and helps keep the podcast going. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, we're back. And are you guys ready? it's time for our interview with Caitlin Bassett. Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast, Caitlin.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and we're really thrilled to learn more about your character, Addison. But first, can you tell the listeners a little bit about you, about your background, and the road that brought you to Quantum Leap? I was doing some research on you, and you're like the real-life Al. There's military intelligence, there's active duty military, there's law school, there's acting, there's horses, there's combat training. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Did I mention bartending?
Yeah, yes, some bartending. I apparently have been training for this role my entire existence. So, I took the really regular, I think, path to acting, which was Army Law School, Quantum Leap. I think that's trajectory. I've just been so lucky. I joined the military at 18 years old. I was still in high school. And I spent 7 years in. I deployed a few times, 3 times. I got my degree while I was in. I had a spectacular experience. I was very lucky. I got to work at NSA and on some really cool missions with some really amazing people. It was not something I was going to do forever. That had always, been something I knew. I had been an actor when I was in school and came from a very musical, theater-y family. And it was a mix. Like my dad was in Vietnam. So we had that aspect. And then we had to me, it all made sense. It wasn't weird to do any of those things. And then, so after, when I was getting out of the Army, I decided to go to law school because that seemed like, the adult thing to do with someone's life. And so I went to New York. My sister lived there. She was producing commercials at the time. She used to be in a band. Like, she's just so cool. She's an oyster farm now. In New York where it's so accessible, I was like, oh, well, I could, explore these more creative things about myself because I'm here. I'm in New York. Like, I didn't go to DC. I didn't go to the pipeline, just back to the agencies. And so I started moonlighting in some theater classes and some writing classes, and it just sucked me in. It just really got me. So I ended up going to the Adler Conservatory, and have been kind of grinding ever since. And then I just became the luckiest person on the planet to land this job.
Yeah. So tell us, how did you land the job? I understand when we were speaking to Deborah early on, just as all the casting was announced, she was uber impressed by you. And she said that you had won some kind of huge contest. And that's how they got to you. I could be getting that wrong, but
I think she was talking about the ABC Discovers, Disney Discovers talent search. So after theater school, a wonderful woman named Marcy Phillips, who I swear I will buy a house for if I can ever afford it, she has a book. She's a casting director at ABC, has been there forever. She's made a career out of finding new faces. That's been her whole career. And she saw me in a class that she was doing for free, actually, during the pandemic, because she was just trying to give back and give actors something to do. And I'd taken her class. And from that moment, I didn't know this, but she had essentially pre-selected me for the Disney Discovers showcase. And so I went through that process, and I think, upwards of 40,000 people competed for those slots, and 14 got in each coast. And that's a huge career launcher. People from like Chadwick Boseman to Lupita Nyong'o, so many people have been through that showcase. Pedro Pascal, and it's been a jumping off point for wonderful people, and the actors in that were wonderful. So we got like a year of kind of training, and we did the showcase online. It was the first year they'd ever done it online. So it was very glamorous. They sent me a GoPro, and I shot it in the basement of my mother's house, set up on a trash can. Acting is very glamorous. And then from there, she helped me get my manager, and that's the manager that fought me into the room for Quantum Leap. And I knew she did too, because I have 2 managers, a guy and a girl. And normally I get an email from their assistant
if I have an audition. But this one I got from Avi herself at like 11:30 at night. And I was like, oh, you made a phone call for this one. And I got the audition and I just remember reading it. First of all, I flew through the pilot script. I had only meant to read a little bit just to see it. And I just loved it. And I saw the role and I saw the background for the role. And I was like, I think, really good for this role. And my second immediate thought was like, there's no way they're going to hire me for this. They're never going to hire me for this job. And they did. I did. It was the whole audition process, right? From callbacks to tests. And my last stop was Ray. I did a chemistry test with Ray, I think against somebody else. And I just got real lucky.
Just if you can go into that process just a little bit, because I'm a little bit curious. I know we've had some changes behind the scenes. I'm assuming that the pilot script that you read was the original pilot, the earthquake pilot.
Correct. Yes.
And when you're on something that is, I guess these days, everything is sort of wrapped in NDAs and sort of mysteries. And because it's such a spoiler sensitive environment, I'm surprised they gave you the whole script. Were you only privy to get a few scenes, and then once they wanted to move forward, they gave you more, or how did that work?
Yeah, they did they attached the script to that. And I'm so glad they did, because it would have been nigh impossible to do those scenes correctly without the context of what was going on. I mean, how on earth would I have possibly guessed what was happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. And I'm really glad they did. It was incredibly helpful.
If you can go into that a little bit more. So you guys had done a complete pilot episode that Deborah told us about. You had done a cut, a director's cut, a producer's cut, then you'd sent it off to the network, and everybody seemed happy with it. And then weeks later, we hear that they decided to switch it up and make a new pilot episode, which is the one that just aired. Can you tell us what that was like? Did you guys have to turn that one around quicker? Was there a lot more that you had to take from what is now going to be episode 6, ostensibly, I suppose, yes, and sort of rework it into the new pilot?
Well, I think I'm glad they did this. Having done both pilots, I think the world is just introduced a bit better in this. Not that the pilot failed to do it. They just had a different way they wanted to open the show. And as you've seen it, they really wanted, because in the first pilot, there wasn't the engagement scene where you got to see the family before the fissure. And I think that's really important, to see what we were before Ben does what he does and kind of rips us apart. And we all have to kind of grapple with that in our own ways. So that's really like what they changed, along, some other small stuff. But like the process of doing it again was honestly kind of nice, because we had, instead of knowing each other for 2 days before filming an episode, we had known each other and had been texting and had been, on these fun group chats for months at that point. We had gone through waiting for a show to get approved, which is it's a bonding experience. It is. We are all praying. The second time we went at it, we had all of these like lived in relationships that I think you saw more. We weren't trying to find them quite as much. You started to see like Mason and I have a banter that's just so fun, and we just adore each other in real life. There's just things, and Jen is just the warmest person, Nanrissa. So there's just these really cool things that we found through time, which I'm so grateful for. And yeah, they rolled in the new pilot production into so we just started. They took a couple production days from episode 6, which is the pilot now, that we obviously have to get, because a lot of the crap I said was world explaining, which is now way too late. So a lot of me has changed. All of HQ has changed, because we're in the thick of it now. But the leap itself, the earthquake, that's all there. I get to work with Jewel again, who is our first co-star. They're flying her in, which I'm so excited. She's a sci-fi legend too, everything she's done in her life. So it's just, I mean, I've seen it as nothing but the most exciting thing that we just have this opportunity. And yeah, we did steal a couple days. So we shot the original pilot in, I want to say 14 days. We shot the second pilot in 12. And then all the rest of our productions are 8-day schedules.
Okay.
I'm curious, with the opportunity to approach Addison's introduction again, did you take a different path at the way you were approaching the character?
I don't think so much, because I still kind of believed, especially in the first one, and you guys saw the pilot or the new pilot, there's an element of what just happened. Like when a bone breaks and like the pain almost hasn't set in yet. Like what just happened? I'm still grappling with that through much of it. And so other than like what's wonderful about the relation and sitting in the relationships more and like leaning on them for comfort and support and love, which we definitely did in 101 much more. We had a wonderful opportunity, but for grappling with, because this is the first time Addison's been in the leap just as much as Ben's been in the leap. And she's still like, when things come at her, it's natural to think it's going to hit you. You don't realize, it's not instinctually, you're not ready for it to go through you like a hologram. It's just, she's learning how to be in it, which I'm so excited as time's going to go on. Because I know everyone, to include me, just is devastated over the loss of Dean Stockwell. And his owl was so fun. And the Alan Sam relationship was so fun. But even in the beginning, there was that time where they were still trying to figure it out. They were still trying to like, oh, what is happening? It's not safe yet. It's not, we're not at a place where we think everything's going to be okay. It's still very, there's an anxiousness to it. And then as the season goes on and as Ben and Addison get more comfortable in leaps, just like as Al and Sam got more comfortable with leaps, that's when you start to have all this space for fun. And, there's never going to be another Dean Stockwell. He was one of the best American actors of all time. I can't be better than Dean ever was. And I can't outdo Dean being Dean. There's never going to be that. So we had to have a different relationship. And what's great is that Ben isn't exactly Sam. And so we get to be something different. But what that heart of like, I'm very invested. Addison's so invested in the outcome. Obviously, she loves Ben. This is her family. This is her life. And like, these are all exciting and we have jobs to do. But there is an aspect of like me being able to have my little popcorn sometimes and be like, oh, this looks tough for you. You should figure that out. And I think that's once we get past these like first, one or two, once we start to establish what this show is and we can settle into more of the fun of it, I think that's when, especially like the Quantum Leap fans, the ones that mourn Dean as much as I do, will start to see that yumminess again.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I wanted to maybe circle back on, one thing that I noticed and that we've discussed on the podcast before the interview played, they went very quickly through the basic premise, the setup. It seemed like this was a pilot that was set up for a more general audience, just to reintroduce the concept without dwelling too much on the geek stuff, on the science stuff, on the leap stuff. Do you have little moments as the series progresses over the next few episodes where you linger a little bit more on those aspects just to explain them more fully?
Yeah. Yep. We had to get through them in the pilot because they really wanted, like Martin just said it in the TCA panel, they wanted this show to have a low bar of entry so that you didn't have to have watched all the seasons of Quantum Leap to enjoy this. But just like, you're going to we have more space and time for the relationship. We also have more space and time for like the nerd side of Quantum Leap, which I am particularly excited about. And that's so much of Ian and like so much of me and Ian, and Ian's working on things. And I'm kind of like, can you English, and then, and that's fun. And yeah, so you're going to see a lot more of that.
That's great. That's the stuff that the fans really want to see. And from the way you're speaking about it, it seems like you were a fan of the original series. How much did you know about the old Quantum Leap before getting the job?
Totally. I was aware of it, but I was just a little under the age group, I think. Belisario at that point was making Jag, and that was a household watch in our, of course it was. I was in the Army and then I went to law school. So somebody watched Jag. Somebody grew up on Jag. But my dad was a huge fan, and he had watched it with my older siblings. I have two half siblings. And they were 10 and 13 years older. So they'd watched it. So I've now gone back and watched, I want to say I'm in episode 3, season 3. And still working my way through. And it's like sometimes I have to stop because I'm like, Dean's so good. I'm like, I can't do that. I have to do me. It's just he's too good. He's too good at what he does. But it's really for the fans. I think it's such a wonderful fan base, and they loved it for the right reasons. So, I feel like it's part of my job to work as much as I can and really study Dean's work and honor him. And I talk to Deborah about him all the time. And Deborah, we're very sad because Deborah always says, like, I'm like, I think I would like Dean. And she goes, you would. And he would have loved you. And it just like, it's sad because, I wish I had met him. But I'll do my best.
I think it's great that you want to honor his legacy, but also do your own thing. And I think that's the best way to approach it because, it's not trying to be the old show. It's trying to be its own thing, but still honor the legacy of the show. And I think that's a great way to blend both worlds together.
Thank you.
And to just extrapolate on that a little bit, you had mentioned before about how great it was to be able to reshoot so that you got a sense of the family before the family was broken and what these people meant to each other. We almost joined you like in media res, like everybody knows each other. Yeah. And you guys had like moments where we could tell that you're all old friends. Does the show explore a little bit about sort of the continuation from the old project? Because Sam is invoked, Al is invoked. So it's very much a season 6, not just a reboot. Do we get to see how this team came together, how you built this whole new version of Project Quantum Leap in California? Is that going to be peppered in?
It is. But before we get to that, they're really wrestling with why'd Ben do it? And as stuff starts to come out about that, that's kind of like what I like to call the nearest alligator. That's the thing closest. So that's kind of what we're doing first. But all of that's like, sprinkled. And we're going to get that and we'll get deeper into that. We definitely have to get it with magic. And they already have. They already shot, like a good establishment of that. We can't pretend like it's a big surprise now. So yes, it's coming, but there's a lot of good stuff to get to before that, which is absolutely, like you said, a long awaited season 6. Right.
So I guess what I'm inferring from what you're saying there is that a lot of times in shows, especially, like say Star Trek or whatever these days, the whole season seems to revolve around one central mystery that drives the plot and the story forward. Or are you telling me that sort of the why Ben leaped is going to be only a small part of this season? The whole season's not going to hinge on them trying to figure it out, or it's going to be resolved a little sooner?
That's definitely the big question. And there's in the what I'm saying is that you are going to get some of your continuations whilst we try and answer that question. And
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Carefully answered.
Carefully.
Thank you. Doing my best.
So, as the Observer, you get to handle probably the most iconic piece of tech on the show, which is the hand link. And the hand link that we saw in this premiere episode is so vastly different from the original, but it has some of the same functions. It's a locator primarily. It's a conduit to SAM. It's also a holographic projector. Will future episodes give that more of a spotlight? Will we be able to see a bit more of what this new hand link can do?
Yes. I think not for the first few. What am I about to shoot? Hang out for 7.
Okay. Interesting.
And
it's funny because the hand link from the first pilot and the hand link from the second pilot are different. So we kind of had to deal with that.
You got my next question.
Right, yeah.
And I just shot that. And yeah, I certainly nodded to Dean whilst dealing. You'll see. Yeah. The hand link, that was more of like a practical thing. We just had to make that make sense. Why does that look so different? But yeah, it's, you'll see. It's exciting. It made me, when I read it, I was like, okay, that made me excited.
Cool.
Look, I'm just stoked, okay? I'm not great at the interview stuff. I will be upfront about this. I'm just stoked. I'm really stoked about this new show. You know, there's lots of exciting things coming up, and I'm really glad that we're able to talk to you about it. Like, and I'm glad to see your enthusiasm about it as well.
Oh, I'm so pumped. I mean, I'm really excited to talk to the fans because I know I'm as heartbroken as they are of the loss of Dean. And so like, I just, you know, let's just try it. Just try it out. Just try it on.
Yeah.
We're working for it.
The fans are ready for something new, and it's very clear that everyone involved cares so much about this. Everything we've seen in interviews so far, the passion that you're showing right now seems to be shared by everyone, and that's just that's going to come through, and it came through in episode 1, definitely. We could tell. It's a strong start,
and it'll just get. It just, like I said, the more space we have, the calmer the story gets, and the more space we have, the more you'll see it.
I would be remiss to not ask this because I think our listeners would string me up. Might there be a trip to a long defunct Project Quantum Leap somewhere in the deserts of New Mexico as the series goes on?
I haven't seen it yet, but we shall see.
Fair enough. Are there any other tidbits that we haven't talked about that you can maybe drop? And if not, I understand.
No. But it's it. Like they're layering this story in with so much that I think people are going to be really excited about. That does make it a long-awaited season 6. So, yeah, give us a good shot. We're doing the best we can to make this like a great Quantum Leap sequel and not just, you know, a brand new version of some old IP.
We understand you did the pilot in Vancouver. You've got a 12-episode run that you're shooting at the moment and waiting to hear about a further 9. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So we drop on Monday, and then, you know, our guess is we'll hear in the next month or so. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, what I'm hearing is guaranteed 12 episodes of Quantum Leap is what I'm hearing. So
that's also what I heard.
Yeah. Who thought we'd be here? So yeah.
How can anyone be mad about 12 more episodes? There's some people that are just against, you know, doing anything else. How can they be mad? You get more. You get more.
Right?
Like it or don't, you get the option.
Sure.
Right? Well, You have been more than generous with your time, Caitlin. Is there any aspect of the show or the character of Addison that we haven't touched upon that you'd like to discuss, that you'd like to expand upon?
I don't think so right now. I think we're gonna explore it in the show, and I'd like to, hopefully talk to you guys again after a few more episodes or after this season, and we can kind of see where we are there, because I think that'll be.
Yeah, that's our master plan. We're inviting you back right now after the season is over, so we can talk about everything.
Yes. No vaccines.
It will be an extravaganza. So, well, all right. Again, Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today on the Quantum Leap podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You know what my favorite part of that interview was? When she mentioned that in the future she wants to have scenes where it's like, eating popcorn, like, hey, it sounds like you're having trouble on that leap. Because it immediately made me think that she's going to show up on the leap with 2 big sacks of snacks and groceries just for herself.
And sit in a chair that says, Caitlin Bassett.
Yeah. Addison, what am I doing here? Why haven't I leaped? Oh, well, because Matlock's on. They haven't done a Matlock remake. What is it? A Magnum PI's on.
A Magnum remake. Yep, that's
Magnum's on.
Hawaii 5-0 is on.
Magnum and Quantum Leap on the same night. Whoa. Stay tuned, folks.
Caitlin's trying to play it all cool, but she is a mega nerd, and she knows this stuff. She's seen that trailer. She loves it as well.
Well, yeah.
She was so funny, and I really hope that we get to see more of that side of her as it goes, and I think that we will. So that gives me hope too. Yeah. Great stuff.
She was funny. She was great. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for coming on the show. I mean, I feel like, gosh, what a get for our first episode. Out the gate.
She even she suggested coming back without us having to be like, hey, you want to come back, please?
That ain't a suggestion. That's a promise. I hope she liked this. I mean, we liked her, so
yeah,
we're best friends now.
That's basically.
Yeah, we're all best friends.
She seems genuinely respectful of what's come before and wants to do right by Dean/Al, and that would be a very easy thing just to say, but I really got the feeling that she meant that, and I think it's absolutely right that she shouldn't try and mimic Al. It just wouldn't work. So it's good that she's doing her own thing and paying respect in her own way. It's good.
Yeah, and it's great because we did talk a lot about the writing earlier in the show. But the fact that both Caitlin and Mason, who we've also spoken to, have basically said straight out, we understand the shoes that we're trying to fill. We understand where we're coming from. And we want to be hypersensitive and respectful to that. Not only do you have writers that I think are really invested in that, but you also now have the actors playing these characters fully cognizant of the legacy that they're carrying on. And that to me bodes well because it's not just like, okay, this is my paycheck this week. It's like we're building something here. And just the level of sincerity that engenders and that they bring to trying to make this as special as possible, it just speaks volumes. It gives me even more hope than we had been, talking about with all of the good stuff that we saw being laid down in the pilot. I mean, this just sort of cements all of the positives. So thank you, Caitlin, for bringing that sort of peace of mind and knowing that you guys are working on that level as well. Good stuff. Good stuff. So, you know what else is good stuff, guys? We have some, well, they're not new patrons, but we have some returning patrons. I just want to welcome them back into the fold. They are Katie Hogan and Richard Thomas. Thank you for coming back, Katie and Richard. They are both supporting us.
Yay, welcome back.
Yeah, they're supporting us at the $5 Leaper level. Now, for new listeners out there who don't know anything about our Patreon site, you can find it at patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. You will find various tiers of membership, all the way from $1 to $20 a month. The $1 and $2 levels are Programmer and Observer. There you'll see any sort of general videos that we release that are usually included in monthly newsletters. You'll have access to that. And at the $2 Observer level, you'll also get a shout out on the show. At the $3 level, that's the Quantum Leap Book Club level, we have been reviewing the Quantum Leap novel series for the last several months, ever since we got through the original series proper. And we created the book club just in honor of that. And if you support at that $3 book club level, you will also get my favorite thing in the world, a nifty Quantum Leap podcast bookmark with a beautiful front, like an exploding hand link design, and the back lists all the books.
You can even use it in your Quantum Leap novels, I discovered.
Wow. Allison, tell us more about that.
Mind blown. So yeah, at the $5 level, like Katie and Richard are, you get access to all of our exclusive bonus content that we post over on Patreon. We have several different exclusive shows, one of them being Fangent. That is where Allison, Matt, and I talk about stuff that's not Quantum Leap, but we geek out about regardless. There is a show called Leaps Elsewhere, where we discuss other projects that star either Scott Bakula or Dean Stockwell. We might have to expand the Leaps Elsewhere to do Raymond Lee and Caitlin Bassett and Mason and Ernie and Narissa. Wow, we'll be doing Leaps Elsewhere for the rest of our lives. And we also have an interview show where we interview patrons about their Quantum Leap fandom. That comes in at the $10 Oh Boy level. If you support at the $10 Oh Boy level, I, Christopher DeFilippis, host of the Quantum Leap podcast, will find you and will talk to you about your Quantum Leap fandom, and we'll make a whole show out of it and put it on the Patreon feed for everybody to hear. And then at the $20 producer level, you get a producer credit on the show, and you'll hear some producers mentioned during the credits of this show. So thank you, one and all, to all of our new patrons, all of our returning patrons, all of our longtime patrons. We literally could not do the show without you. That's patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. Now,
Chris, before you carry on, can I just say, you really sounded like you were going to say you had a particular set of skills there. As somebody that's been interviewed by Chris, I've got to say, being interviewed by Chris is lovely. It's not terrifying at all.
I'll terrify you if I need to. You gotta
Is he shining a spotlight in your face right now, making you say that?
Yes. Is that okay, Chris? Was it right? Was that what I was about to say?
I'm just in shill mode. So yeah. So patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. Always be shilling. Always be shilling. Now, this is the point of the show where we usually go into feedback, but since this is the first episode of the new series, we don't really have any feedback that pertains to it. So I'm going to skip that and tell you there are many ways that you can reach us here at the Quantum Leap Podcast. If you have some feedback about July 13th, 1985, you can send us a letter, an actual letter at P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York 11705. That's P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York 11705. You can get us by phone at 707-847-6682. You can email us at quantumleappodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/quantumleappodcast. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Quantum Leap Pod. And you can also comment on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Quantum Leap Podcast. Just remember that we may use your response on an upcoming episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast. And speaking of up next, this episode of the podcast is over, but you can continue the conversation on the premiere episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast Aftershow. Woo!
Yay!
Yeah. So that's over on our YouTube channel. Again, youtube.com/The Quantum Leap Podcast. We have been promoting the YouTube channel for months now and all of the amazing content that Albie has been producing. So this is sort of like his baby, his flagship. Don't miss the premiere. The format of the show is Albie and a special guest talking about the new Quantum Leap, and joining him for this first episode is Quantum Leap co-executive producer Hayden McQueenie, familiar name to many of you out there. You can also see video versions of the Caitlin Bassett interview, as well as interviews that we've done with Leo Seo Dan Istrate, and Maile Dudeck. They also, all three of those people appeared in this episode. Leo was at the engagement party. Dan is the shady fake jewelry dealer at the pawn shop. What was his name in the episode? It was really
Horace.
cool. Horace. Yeah, he was Horace in the episode. And Maile was the daughter of Ryan. She had a nice little scene with Ryan's family moment there when we realized that he really wasn't a bad guy after all. So
Albie's daughter, Rennie, did that interview. It's so stinking cute.
It's lovely.
Yeah, that is a first for the Quantum Leap podcast. Rennie was terrific at it, and Maile had a ball too. So both of them are just, they're such little Quantum Leap nerds. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone is listening who's new to the podcast, you're not familiar with Albie or Hayden or Rennie or any of the other people, yeah, definitely check that after show out. They're just super enthusiastic about all things Quantum Leap. This show started because of Albie and his enthusiasm for the show and all the messages that it espouses to people. And so you really should check out what he has to say. He's putting in a ton of work.
Yeah, and I mean, the YouTube channel is like bigger and more expansive than it's ever been. So it's really showing, and we're growing by leaps and bounds.
We got all the trailers there.
All the trailers in 4K. We were the first with many of them. So leaps and bounds. It's just growing day by day. So go over there and join the party over there as well. There are many parties happening here at the Quantum Leap podcast. So again, that's youtube.com/the Quantum Leap Podcast. The after show should be live right now. So go over and take a look, have some fun over there. All right, guys. I think that we're done, but we're not really done because we're going to go weekly now. We have a new episode a week. This is so mind blowing and
taking it back old school.
Yeah, Matt, why don't you tell us what's next?
Sure. The next episode, episode 2. Atlantis, where Ben is going to find himself on a space shuttle in 1995. Exciting stuff. The 90s. We're in the 90s. When did the 90s become old?
Holy smokes.
I don't like this.
Yeah,
This is going to be some crazy stuff. Closest they got to space in the original show, Diaper Monkey. So, I mean, it depends on who you ask, but got to go uphill from there, right?
Well, as long as we see Ben in a diaper in this one, then we're all good, right?
That's what astronauts have to do, right?
Yeah. They wear space diapers.
And now you're getting a sneak preview of the caliber of content that is going to be on episode 2.
Talk about poo.
Atlantis. Oh, I can't wait to discuss it with you guys. Until that time, I have been Christopher DeFilippis.
I've been Allison Pregler.
And I've been Matt Dale.
And we'll see you on the shuttle, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Quantum Leap podcast, hosted by Allison, Matt, and Chris, with voice talent and contributions from Hayden McQueenie and Zoe Dean. Visit us at quantumleappodcast.com. To support the show, please go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. The executive producer of the Quantum Leap podcast is Albert Burge. Christopher DeFilippis and Hayden McQueenie are the co-executive producers.
Special thanks to our producers Joshua Burwald, Jeff Kiska, Craig Riedler, Cosplay Dad, Charles Allen Gossard, and Morgan Felden.
The thoughts expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not necessarily represent those of the Quantum Leap podcast, its partners, or affiliates. The Quantum Leap universe and all it contains is the property of Belisarius Productions and Universal Television. The Quantum Leap podcast is not affiliated with Belisarius Productions or Universal Television, and no copyright infringement is intended. Please visit barrenspace.com for this and other amazing content. The Quantum Leap podcast is a Barren Space production.
Because I know he's Mr. Blooper Reel. He'll put everything in. All right.
Oh, God. Should we stop again?
No, it's okay. I'm definitely going to listen to it before we drop the episode. So I'm listening to you, Burge. All right. It's fun to be able to yell at an editor again.
Yeah, there were a couple times during the interview I burped a little. I'm like, I hope that didn't. No one can hear that.
I didn't hear it. You know, you can mute your microphone, right? There's a little button.
I didn't know. I don't do loud burps. I can't even make myself burp if I want to. But like, I just, you know, it was a couple of little like.
And in front of Mason too.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to be a slob.
I'm so embarrassed.
Like, welcome to the interview. Burp.
I'm embarrassed for you, and I'm embarrassed by you.
This is nothing new.
What was that thoughtful answer you gave us? That's real cool.
Slip a quick fart out as well, why not?
Put them at their ease.
Quantum Leap premiere September 19th.
Smoke them if you got them.
Oh, stop it, you guys. I've just had a bunch of Coke. I'm going to need to go to the toilet before we start now.
You literally funnied the piss out of Matt.
I guess. Doing ASMR. Hey guys, welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Whispery. Such a.
We're going to be talking about the pilot today.
Right, I'm done.
Oh, good.
Hopefully.
Ooh, what a sultry whisper.
It was lovely. I almost went to sleep.
All right, now take it from Allison's doing that stuff. And all right,
whatever the hell I just talked about.
The magic of editing. So
yeah.
So yeah, no, she was funny. July. What the hell's the name of this episode? July 13th, 1925.
That shit happens.